Mr. Speaker, I must say I disagree profoundly with what he has had to say about negotiating now. I don't think that option is open to us. We must do our best to support and protect the people of Ukraine and working with our international friends and allies to constrict what Vladimir Putin can do. And on his point about Russia today, Mr. Speaker, I simply observe that the former leader of the Scottish Nationalist Party is his leader. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. His leader. I understand the pleas he entered in defence and mitigation. They don't seem to cut much ice with me.
Sir Graham Brady.
I wasn't standing.
Steve Crabb is the name.
Mr. Speaker, I strongly welcome the further set of sanctions announced by the Prime Minister this evening, and we look forward to further steps being taken in the days ahead and not being held back by perhaps some of the slower-moving members of the alliance in Europe. But does the Prime Minister agree with me that if sanctions are really to bite on Putin and his gangster government, then inevitably it will mean cost and inconvenience to UK economic interests, but that cost and inconvenience will be as nothing compared to what the people of Ukraine are going through, and we stand with them this evening.
Yes, I'm afraid my honourable friend is right. It will mean cost, it will mean inconvenience, it will mean difficulty for us in the UK. But that will be a price worth paying, Mr. Speaker, for defeating the objectives of Vladimir Putin and showing that aggression does not pay.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Could I just follow up on the question from the Honourable Member for the Isle of Wight about the Combating Kleptocracy cell in the National Crime Agency, and just seek from the Prime Minister a view whether additional powers will be required for the National Crime Agency and additional resources for them to do their work.
I thank her very much. They will, of course, they have plenty of existing statute, but the additional powers that they will have, amongst other things, will be the ability to peel back the facade of ownership, which I think will be extremely valuable.
Jonathan Ginocchia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whilst this terrible, appalling incident is, of course, directly the cause of Russia, I think it's appropriate that we also recognise that over the last 14 years, the UK, the EU, the US collectively have not been attentive to Russia in the way that we should. Can my right honourable friend now say that whatever happened in the past, moving forward, we are not going to let Russia fall between our fingers again?
Mr. Speaker, I think the lesson of 2014 is that the whole of the West failed to respond in the way that we should. And when a sovereign country was invaded and part of that country was occupied, I'm afraid it was quite wrong that we tried to manage the situation with the various diplomatic processes that we did, which in the end produced absolutely nothing except finally this catastrophic invasion today. We have to learn a bitter lesson, Mr. Speaker, about how to deal with Vladimir Putin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the Prime Minister that it seems like the curtain has now come down on that era that began in 1989, and we've lived in an era of change since then. This now feels like a change of era. In this new era, the permissive environment that we created for the Kremlin's quartermasters to live, to invest, and to party in London, sometimes with the Prime Minister himself, that must now come to an end. So let me ask the Prime Minister this. Will he undertake to ensure that every visa issued to a Russian dual national is now reviewed, and where proximity to President Putin is proven, that citizenship should be stripped away?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are doing that, though I think it is. I just think it is worth the House remembering the point that I made the other day. Not every Russian is a bad person, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker, can I welcome the package of sanctions the Prime Minister has set out? And whilst I understand why it's not been possible to suspend Russia from the SWIFT payment system at this stage, can I ask what work we're doing with our European allies to offer them reassurance so that eventually we can get to a position when they can be suspended, because that is by far and away the biggest thing that will isolate the Russian economy.
My honourable friend is spot on. The biggest thing would be if everybody stopped taking Russian hydrocarbons. But SWIFT is extremely important, and it's a Belgian company, as I'm sure the House knows. We're raising it. We're trying to make progress with our friends, but for obvious reasons, it has to be done in unison.
Sir M. MacDonald.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. This morning I spoke with friends in Kyiv who were leaving the country with their family, their children, and we've all seen the scenes from the capital of cars trying to get out. So I send my deepest thanks to the embassy team there who are doing all they can to support people. But can I ask the Prime Minister about two areas of support for Ukraine: economic support and continuing support for defensive capability? Will both of those areas of support intensify, and can he assure the House, I see the Foreign Secretary telling me so, but can he assure the House that the government will continue the deepest possible conversations with the government in Ukraine to ensure that no matter the assault that comes to it from Vladimir Putin, we will be supporting them in a deeply meaningful sense?
Yes, on that last point, the answer is certainly yes, Mr. Speaker. And just for instance, the other day I was looking at two British minesweepers being refitted in Rosyth, as I'm sure he knows, which are due to go to Ukraine. The question will be access, Mr. Speaker. That's what it all depends on.
Sir Robert Butland.
Mr. Speaker, it's crystal clear from this act of naked aggression that Putin doesn't seek Finlandisation on his borders. He seeks at best to recreate a Belarus in the south, or at worst to dismember the sovereign state of Ukraine. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that that does mean that we need to build upon the outcome of our integrated defence review? We do need to think differently about Eastern Europe from the past. And then at home, with his announcement on bringing forward economic crime measures, it seems that there is a consensus in this House that could allow us to bring forward emergency legislation to bring those important measures to really hit those people hard and hit them now.
Speaker, I think that is clearly the will of the House, and it is the will of the government, and that's why we'll be taking those important measures, bringing them forward on Monday.
Shanara Ali.
Mr. Speaker, my thoughts are with the Ukrainian people at this time. And while I welcome the sanctions the Prime Minister's announced today, can he update the House on whether he plans to sanction the major state-owned Russian banks such as Sberbank and Gazprom Bank and the non-state bank Alpha Bank? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
David Mundell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ukrainian POW chapel at Lockerbie in my constituency is a focal point for the Ukrainian diaspora in Scotland, and prayers are being said there for their fellow countrymen. But what Ukrainians in the UK have identified, being grateful for the military support that has already been forthcoming, is that there is an immediate need for medical battlefield supplies, for warm clothing for troops and for camouflage gear. And can my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, assure the House that they will be forthcoming?
I thank my right honourable friend very much. He raises a very important issue, and we are working on exactly those supplies right now.
Van Jones.
I thank the Prime Minister for his statement and very much welcome the sanctions that he's announced today. But can he give an assurance that the sanctions that are going to target individuals will also target relatives and connected parties? And like the Honourable Right Honourable Member for Swindon, he mentioned the Economic Crime Bill. We've got the review of the Official Secrets Act and the Foreign Registration Act. Why can't we bring them forward and do them now? They would get huge support. And we've been waiting for some of these for nearly 2 years.
Mr. Speaker, I can tell him that we will certainly be making sure that we are able to sanction and do sanction relatives and other interested parties, and there'll be a rolling programme of intensifying sanctions.
Crispin Blunt.
Having been one of the officials that accompanied the then Defence Secretary to both Moscow and Kiev in 1993, I'm in no doubt that the signatories of the United States and the United Kingdom on the Budapest Memorandum gave Ukraine the confidence to give up its nuclear deterrent. Will my right honourable friend support the United States, to whatever extent it is prepared to go, to stand alongside the United States in giving whatever military support it's prepared to do so to Ukraine?
My right honourable friend is absolutely right to remind the House of the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which had exactly that effect and created exactly that obligation on us as one of the signatories.
Boris.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister will be aware that we are on this side of the House very keen on these sanctions. Although, does he share with me the worry that the record of driving out dictators and demagogues with these sanctions isn't always that successful? Does he share my concern that if we've read what Putin has been saying these last few hours, here's a man that might not stop at Ukraine. He might go into a NATO country. And are we playing that scenario? Because many of us think that might be the next step.
The right honourable gentleman is absolutely right to raise that appalling possibility, and it is vital that we reaffirm again that under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty we stand foursquare behind every one of our NATO allies and will come to their defence.